everybody. I am Jill Hemmerline, and I am the Director of Emergency Preparedness for the East Central Florida Regional Planning Council. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. All right. So let me tell you a little bit about East Central Florida, and I know you saw that great video, and let me tell you just a little bit about East Central Florida as it pertains mostly to emergency management as well. So who are we? We have 8 counties in the region. This map here shows regional planning councils that divide the state. So there's 10 regional planning councils, and we are one of them. And we are actually one of the biggest regional planning councils in the area, or in the state, sorry. Our council brings together local elected officials and appointed members, and our staff provides planning, data, and technical assistance. We act as a convener, a neutral table where local, federal, and state partners can coordinate and share challenges. This foundation for the emergency preparedness work we will walk through today. So again, I said we serve 8 counties. That would be Brevard, Lake, Marion, Orange, Osceola, Seminole, Sumter, and Volusia, along with the cities and the communities within them. That footprint spans coastal, urban, suburban, and rural areas. So preparedness needs look very different from one county to the next. We work directly with county and municipal governments, emergency management agencies, first responders, state and federal partners as well. We also engage the private industry, nonprofits, and residents, since preparedness depends on a whole community approach. Serving this range of partners is why our programs are built to scale up or down to fit local capacity. One glove doesn't fit all. Our mission is to identify and address regional issues through collaboration to create healthy, sustainable, thriving, and a resilient region. Collaboration is the key word here. We don't act alone. We bring partners together to the table and help them align and share priorities. Our work spans from planning to economic development, resilience, transportation support, data mapping, and emergency preparedness. Regional issues do not just stop at jurisdictional boundaries. So a regional approach is pretty much helping to avoid duplicating efforts, and it closes the gaps. Emergency preparedness is the focus. The rest is the focus for the rest of our presentation. So let's get into it. I'd like you to meet the team. That will be the team of 2, myself and Elizabeth Roberson. She is our LEPC coordinator. The East Central Florida Regional Planning Council's emergency preparedness team works with the local governments, emergency management agencies, first responders, state and federal partners, private industry, nonprofit organizations, and our goal is very simple. It's just to help ensure that communities are prepared, that response systems work together effectively, and the critical services can continue during emergencies. The core of what our office actually does day to day, emergency operations and continuity plans. We write comprehensive emergency management plans and COOPs for cities such as Satellite Beach and the city of Cocoa Beach, to name a few. Those are in one of our counties, Brevard. We also do hazard mitigation and floodplain programs. The RPC has also written LMS for Volusia County. And we do exercises and trainings and use technical assistance, vulnerability assessments, local emergency planning committee, which is the LEPC, which we'll talk a lot about, hazard analysis and tier 2 reporting, and much more. So the local emergency planning committee, or LEPC, and this is where all of this is coming together. LEPCs were created under Section 301 of the EPCRA, the Community Right to Know Act, which Elizabeth is going to tell you more about here in a little bit. Congress did not leave chemical emergency planning to chance, so it started this, and you'll hear about the history about this in a minute. Members are appointed through the State Emergency Response Commission. In Florida, the CERC appoints the members to each of the state's LEPC districts, and our council serves as the host for this. Membership is deliberately broad. We have anywhere from elected officials, law enforcement, fire, EMS, emergency management professionals, hospitals, transportation, environmental groups, the media, facility owners, and operators. And when I say facility owners, that would be the tier 2 facilities that we're going to talk about in a little bit. Also, we have community members that are a part of the LEPC. The mix is for a point. It's a community-driven planning approach, and the people who would actually respond to release, or the facilities and all the residents nearby, we want to bring them all to the table before anything happens. In practice, the committee develops and updates the local hazardous materials emergency response plan, reviews tier 2 and hazard analysis information coming in from facilities, supports exercises and training, and serves as the point of contact for the public's right to know. Meetings are open to the public, and we do welcome you to join us. The more information about will be at the end of this. Speaking of which, our next meeting is going to be August 26th in Lake County. So if you're interested, at the end of our presentation, you will get to see our email addresses again, and you can email, and we will be glad to send you an invitation. Now, EPCRA. Can you hear it now?
The Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act of 1986, or EPCRA, was created to help communities plan for emergencies involving hazardous substances. EPCRA establishes requirements for federal, state, and local governments, Indian tribes, and industry. EPCRA sets standards for emergency planning and community right-to-know information reporting on hazardous and toxic chemicals.
EPCRA helps the public by allowing them to understand and have access to information on what chemicals are stored in their community, how they are transported, what the hazards are, what actions they need to take if there's a release, whether it's intentional or accidental, whether or not they need to shelter in place or evacuate. It allows them to plan for circumstances where they really do have a life and death decision to make.
Information is power, and in this business today, if I know going to an address or going to a location that there are other hazards there, that it's not your run-of-the-mill building fire, there are chemicals involved, that will definitely better help us serve the community that we're here to take care of.
The community right-to-know provisions help increase the public's knowledge and access to information on chemicals at individual facilities, their uses and releases into the environment. States and communities working with facilities can use the information made available under EPCRA to improve chemical safety and protect public health and the environment.
One of the things that we use our Tier 2 reporting program for is we bring the information right up to the fingertips of our responders who respond out for emergencies at those locations. Guys who are responding to calls in that area can bring the Tier 2 reporting form up for that facility right to their fingertip and tell what the chemicals are that are being stored in there.
The danger of not knowing what chemicals are in your community is that you can't prepare for them. You can't establish plans on what to do with your family and evacuation routes and whether or not it's safe to enter a particular area. You can't plan on things like how many emergency responders are needed for a community, what kind of firefighting equipment is needed, how many first responders are necessary, what does the hospital need to be ready for if something does happen. It's an outstanding planning tool.
All right. Elizabeth, tell us a little bit more about EPCRA.
All right, so EPCRA stands for the Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act. It was passed by Congress in 1986 as Title III of the Superfund Amendments and Reauthorization Act. You'll often hear it referred to as SARA 3. It is the foundation for everything hazardous materials related. The law does two things at once. First, emergency planning. It requires state and local structures to plan in advance for a chemical release. And second, community right to know. It requires facilities to report what hazardous and toxic chemicals they have on site, and it makes that information available to first responders and the public.
EPCRA was a direct result of two tragic incidents that in the 80s, that one was in Bhopal, India, and the other one was in West Virginia, right? In December of 1984, the release of methyl isonate from the plant
Methyl
in Bhopal.
isocyanate.
Isocyanate, yeah. I always have problems with that one. From the plant in Bhopal killed thousands of people and injured many thousands more. Less than a year later, a release at a similar plant in Institute, West Virginia, sent more than 100 people to the hospital. The lesson learned from both events was that communities and responders had no reliable way to know what chemicals were stored next door to them. So, and they had no plan on what to do if something happened. So EPCRA exists now to close that gap. Keep that origin in mind as we go through the requirements in the future slides, and every reporting obligation and planning committee that we discuss, it traces back to the preventable loss of life. So Elizabeth, tell us a little bit more about the Bhopal, India.
So on December 3rd, 1984, a leak of 45 tons, that's US tons, of the methyl isocyanate occurred at a pesticide plant in Bhopal, India. The gas drifted over the densely populated neighborhoods around the plant, killing thousands of people immediately, and created a lot of panic as tens of thousands of others attempted to flee the city. Over 500,000 survivors were injured, experiencing respiratory problems, severe eye irritation or blindness, and neurological issues. Decades after the disaster, health effects were still being seen among survivors' children and others who grew up in the aftermath of the leak. Many experienced severe medical conditions and disabilities, including partial paralysis, severe brain damage, and chronic illnesses. In 2004, drinking water sample was performed from a well near the site, showing contamination 500 times higher than the maximum limits recommended by the World Health Organization. In relation to that, on August 11th, 1985, that's 8 months after the disaster in Bhopal, a methylene chloride and aldecarb oxide leak occurred at a similar plant in Institute, West Virginia. This release sent a pale yellowish cloud of chemicals into the nearby towns of Dunbar, Institute, Nitro, and St. Albans. Company officials waited about 20 minutes before notifying local authorities and officials of a dangerous chemical leak. So several authorities were actually learning about the leak occurring by panicking residents rather from the company. 134 people were hospitalized for symptoms, including respiratory problems and skin irritation.
And so now we know why the laws were put in place, right? So speaking of the laws, they apply to federal, state, local, and tribal governments, as well as regulated facilities that store or use hazardous chemicals. That dual reach is what makes it work. Government has the planning duty and the industry has the reporting duty. Its central goal is to improve preparedness, coordination, and access to chemical hazard information before an emergency occurs, not during one. Planning done in advance is what gives responders and residents the time to act. The right to know piece matters just as much. Communities are entitled to know what chemicals are stored near them, and that transparency is what drives better planning at the local level. Speaking of the local level, Elizabeth, tell us more about the Florida EPCRA framework.
So Florida adopted its own emergency planning and community right to know framework through the Florida Statute, Chapter 252, Part 2 in 1988. Florida EPCRA operates with the advice and consent of the Florida State Emergency Response Commission, often called SERC. The state framework supports compliance verification and reporting for regulated facilities. Florida's system connects state-level oversight with the local emergency planning committees and local fire departments. This structure helps ensure that hazardous chemical information reaches the agencies that need it for planning and response. Tier 2 reporting is the annual emergency and hazardous chemical inventory report required under EPCRA. Facilities must report hazardous chemicals that meet or exceed established thresholds. Reports include chemical inventories, quantities, storage locations, and potential hazards. In Florida, reports are submitted to the State Emergency Response Commission, the local emergency planning committee, and the facility's jurisdictional fire departments. Tier 2 information supports pre-incident planning and gives responders critical information before a chemical emergency occurs. Tier 2 reports help local and state emergency responders prepare for chemical-related incidents that could affect the surrounding community. Reports identify facility contacts before an incident, allows responders to communicate quickly with knowledgeable personnel. Chemical storage and hazard information helps responders assess risk, determine protective actions, and prioritize life safety. Information from the Tier 2 reports can support pre-plans, site visits, response decision-making, and public safety coordination. When an emergency occurs at or near a covered facility, the reported information can help responders act faster and with better situational awareness. An extremely hazardous substance, or EHS, is a chemical identified by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency as capable of causing serious irreversible health effects from accidental releases. EHS chemicals are listed under 40 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 355. Common examples include ammonia, chlorine, and sulfuric acid. EHS chemicals receive special attention because of their potential consequences if affected or released into the environment. Facilities with EHS chemicals may have additional planning and notification responsibilities under EPCRA.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Every day we get notifications from the state watch office or state warning point. Most of them are after the fact, and they include details about the quantity and the containment. Facilities must make emergency release notifications for releases into the environment that meet the reportable quantity thresholds. So we'll get notifications of, I get emails all day of from all the different counties, all 8 counties, whether it be wastewater, and they're very detailed. They let us know if it's gone into if it's gone into a storm drain or if it's contained, and it's information that we keep on hand to better serve our region. Notifications apply to the EPCRA Extremely Hazardous Substances and the Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation and Liability Act, shortened for CERCLA. It's hazardous substances when their regulatory thresholds are met. So each chemical has a different threshold quantity, and it's based on how big is big and how bad is bad, right? And that's kind of how we live in emergency management. Immediate notifications are typically made by telephone to the LEPC coordinator, which is Elizabeth. Sometimes we get emails when they're not that emergent, but we will get phone calls. Written follow-up emergency notifications must be submitted within 7 days of the initial release. These notifications help emergency management partners understand what was released, where it occurred, and what actions may be needed in the future. A hazard analysis is when the reporting requirements we just covered turn into something responders can use on the job, as discussed in the video earlier. Facilities file their Tier 2 chemical inventories, and we take that data out in the field. During the visit, we'll walk the site with the facility staff, verify what is stored on property against what was reported, chemical quantities, identities, container types. Is it in a tote? Is it in a barrel? Where is it located? We confirm with the agency and their emergency contacts. We review the access points and the surrounding land use, and know anything that would matter to a responder arriving maybe at 3 in the morning. Elizabeth, tell us a little bit more about our HA responsibilities.
Site-specific hazard analysis for airborne releases of extremely hazardous substances are conducted in each county in East Central Florida as required by EPCRA. The East Central Florida LEPC coordinator, me, conducts annual hazard analysis and on-site visits for Brevard, Lake, Orange, Osceola, and Sumter counties. Occasionally for some of the larger facilities, such as maybe some of the large amusement tourism facilities or the big bad stuff in Space Coast, we'll have both of the LEPC staff, Jill and I, to do those visits. The annual site visits help verify facility information, understand site conditions, and strengthen coordination with local partners. So when we go there, we'll reach out to the local fire department that has that jurisdiction, see if they want to come join us on that visit.
There are
This
three
county goes-
counties. Oops, sorry.
Oh, sorry, you go.
Yeah, there are three counties that weren't mentioned. I just wanted to say Marion, Seminole, and Volusia. They conduct their own hazard analysis. So their fire departments, those counties conduct their own, and then they get reimbursed from the state for doing those. So, go ahead.
I was just going to wrap it up with this county-based approach supports the consistent preparedness while recognizing local responsibilities and capabilities.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And then identification.
So hazard identification determines which facility conditions could cause injury, property damage, or environmental harm during a hazardous material spill or release. So a lot of times, it's easy to see that if you're driving in your car or on the train and you see some other vehicle with a placard on there, it gives a very quick info on what exactly is that big bad that's in there. So key information includes the chemical name, storage location, container type, quantity on site, and the nature of the hazard. So some hazard characteristics may include flammability, toxicity, corrosivity, or other physical and health hazards. For example, say we have facility A that stores 300,000 pounds of ammonium hydroxide in an above-ground tank in building B. Now, the safety data sheet identifies that hazards such as metal corrosion, acute toxicity, skin and eye damage, sensitization, and the target organ toxicity. It's not something you want to touch.
No.
Vulnerability analysis identifies areas and populations that could be affected if a hazardous materials release occurs. So this will include nearby residents, public facilities, critical infrastructure, environmental resources, and other sensitive receptors. So threat zones are estimated using chemical properties, quantity, release assumptions, and local conditions. So an example connecting back is facility A has an estimated threat zone radius of 1.1 miles based on the physical properties of ammonium hydroxide. So that's within that area is approximately 127 residents based on the most recent census and a natural gas power plant within that area, showing potential impacts on both people and essential infrastructure.
This is very important things that the first responders need to know.
Risk analysis evaluates the likelihood of an accidental hazardous materials release and the severity of potential consequences. It considers estimated vulnerable zones, previous incident history, local experience, and currently available technical information. So in the profile of a facility, in that section, it might mention, we might mention that that facility, say 7 years ago, had 4 different reports of a leak within 5 months of each other, because that has happened. Or it might mention the operator said that they witnessed some degradation in equipment maintenance, something just to keep in mind in the profile of the facility. So the process helps communities judge both probability and consequence. Risk analysis supports prioritization by identifying which hazards require the most attention and planning, training, and coordination. The end result helps guide realistic preparedness actions rather than just relying only on chemical quantity or facility size.
That's pretty important. All right, so there's another thing that we do here too is called a commodity flow study. Now, I tried to look for a photo to show you a commodity flow study, and it's nothing any more glamorous than 2 people sitting on the side of the road with clipboards and actually jotting down the information on the vehicle. So that picture of Elizabeth and I earlier, yes, I took AI, I did something fun, and I asked that picture that I showed you earlier of Elizabeth, and I said, put us on the side of the road with clipboards, doing a commodity flow study, watching the tractors go by with the placards. And this is what it came up with. So I thought I'd have a little comic relief, but that's exactly what a commodity flow study is just sitting on the side of the road with a clipboard, jotting down all of the placards that you see, those diamond placards, and then taking that data and saying, okay, this is the methyl ethyl bad stuff that's driving down our roads, right? There is some talks we are talking, and this is what Portals of Innovation is about, right? We're talking with DOT because there are cameras out there that are watching the roads, right? And would that not be great to get AI or get some sort of program, not necessarily AI, but a program to read these placards for us, so that way you don't have two people sitting out on the side of the road doing a commodity flow study. So that's something that we're talking about in the future for be able to provide that commodity flow study. You want to tell us a little bit about the commodity flow study?
So like Jill said, it's a lot of just sitting on the side of the road. Beforehand, we would determine which are the most frequent roads, but not. So we would look at the most frequent roads and then just some of the side roads that maybe might not be thought of so much across the 8 different counties. Because we have 5 different international airports. We have our very busy tourism industry in Orange County, and then we also have the very strong aerospace and the ports in Brevard County. So Orange and Brevard has the higher destination and origin for these hazardous materials. So from our most recent commodity flow study, about 70% of the hazardous materials observed on our roadways were Class 3 flammable liquids. Remaining materials included Class 2 gases, Class 8 corrosive substances, Class 9 miscellaneous hazardous materials, and a Class 4 dangerous goods. When it comes to transportation, nearly 87% of these commodities are moved by truck. Second to that is about 11% transported by railway. If you've been in the East Central Florida region, you'll notice we have quite a lot of rails going through a bunch of our counties, and about remaining 2% moving through Port Canaveral.
Yeah, and CSX is and other rail partners. If you request, if you're a county and you want to get their commodity flow studies, you can do a request to those rails and the rail partners, and they will give you their commodity, because they have, a manifest of everything that's going on the rail. So they keep track of that, and it's pretty interesting. So one of the things that another thing that we have is an acronym called HMEP, which is the Hazardous Materials Emergency Preparedness Grant Program. And the U.S. Department of Transportation HMEP grant program, it was established in 1990 by the Hazardous Materials Transportation Uniform Safety Act. Beginning in 1993, the PHMSA issued grants to help the states develop, improve, and carry out emergency planning as a part of the National Response System and EPCRA. The program is funded by fees collected from those placards that we just talked about. The hazardous materials shippers and carriers transporting hazardous materials, interstate, intrastate, and foreign commerce, have to pay those fees. HMEP funding supports monitoring technical assistance, training curriculum, and the publication of the Emergency Response Guidebook, which is pictured here on this slide. We have a ton of them in stock, and I can arrange for you to pick one up at your local EOC or fire station. Myself or Elizabeth can, if you're interested in one of these guides or when the new ones come out. Right now, this is 2024 is the latest guide. So all you have to do is reach out to either one of us, and we will make sure that you can get one for free. In Florida, the HMEP funds are channeled through the Florida Division of Emergency Management to the LEPCs. Funding supports hazardous materials training and planning activities throughout the state. We pay for first responders to go to 2 symposiums. The one is the Hazmat Symposium, the Florida Hazardous Materials Symposium, which is in January each year in Daytona Beach. And then the Lithium Ion Battery Symposium being held at the State Fire College in Ocala next month. The East Central Florida LEPC uses HMEP funding to deliver training opportunities throughout the year as well. We provide classes such as HazWOPER, Hazmat Technician, and Hazmat Medic. These courses can be pretty pricey for small municipalities, and our grant assists or covers those costs completely. So we'll talk a little bit more about exercises. We discussed earlier that our team is required to annually conduct at least 2 tabletop exercises or 1 full-scale exercise. It is a deliverable for our LEPC grant. Beyond that requirement, we also do plans and conduct exercises for local governments, private companies, and anyone that'll basically hire us to do an exercise. Exercises test plans, build relationships, and reveal gaps before a real hazardous materials incident occur. The most recent exercise we just did was called Operation Dark Horizon. This was a exercise funded by PHMSA, and it's a PERG grant. It's the Pipeline Emergency Response Grant by the Pipeline Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, PHMSA. So it was called Operation Dark Horizon because it was a nighttime exercise, and we just had this on July 29th. I have a cool little video that I put together that I'm going to walk you through some of it when it starts here. So that was our logo for Operation Dark Horizon. There's you'll be able to hear some background noise. It was at the Orlando International Airport. There were over 100 people in attendance. It turned out to be beautiful, even though the forecast was supposed to be rainy. So we wound up getting shelter tents from the Orange County EMS. Those tents were great because it provided a space for the controllers and the evaluators to meet, and also the moulage. The moulage that was done by Orlando Health, the team that you see right there, they came in and they put moulage on all the volunteers. There's some plastic sticking out of it, to simulate glass. And the actors and the process of putting on moulage make the scenario so much better and more realistic. And here's some video for you guys to see how realistic. And I don't know if you can hear, but they're moaning. So this was right before the exercise started. So this was a lot of fun. We had there's something called an inject where you try and throw people off. And we had this one lady, her job was to only speak Cantonese and to try and get the first responders to get a translator. And it worked. They did their jobs. So this is right now, this was after the explosion happened. That was part of the exercise. As you can see, it got a little dark and we have lights out there because we didn't end this exercise until about 11 o'clock is when the exercise ended, 11 p.m. Without the volunteers, this would have not been as realistic. As you can see, they are, this is an exercise, but they are taking them off on gurneys and stretchers. They have them all strapped in, and there was even a collapsed building portion of this exercise where they had to search and rescue. They had to do search and rescue, and Orange County and Orlando and the ARF, as you can see. So these are all photos from that day of the exercise. They brought their mobile command unit out. It was really neat because this is the exercise design team from GOA and myself and Elizabeth, and we were able to go in that wonderful apparatus that they brought. And it was just a really great effort. A lot of people came together, and there were several moving parts to this. Here's one of them. There was a fireball explosion simulated, and so they have this tower here that they're able to simulate and show. And of course, you gotta love these big ARF trucks. You gotta love those. there's all sorts of fun things that that they got to do that night, and it was some shoring and some the volunteers were great. Some of them I think fell asleep on the stretcher because it was pretty late at night. The first responders were all amazing. That was at the end with our hot wash, our controllers and our evaluators. We all sat and talked about the good. We asked for 3 ups and 3 downs, and it was an overall wonderful exercise. And I'm very proud to have been a part of that. So that was Operation Dark Horizon. So these were our the partners that were a part of this were Orange County, City of Orlando, City of Cocoa, Seminole County, Volusia County, Orlando Health, Salvation Army, the Greater Orlando Aviation Authority or Airport Authority, and Florida Gas Transmission, because it was their gas line that we simulated that there was a rupture. And I know that we've gone we're moving really fast about this, which leaves us extra time for questions. But we're going to wrap it up here and pull this all back to the goal of emergency preparedness. And I'm going to take you through the finish line here. I'm going to start with a big one. Hazardous materials preparedness depends on accurate reporting, strong planning, ongoing coordination among facilities, emergency planners, first responders, and the communities. No single one of those groups can do this alone. It is truly a whole community approach. The system only works when everyone's participating. EPCRA and the Florida EPCRA create a structure for information sharing and planning. Remember where we started with the Bhopal and the West Virginia. That's what started all this and why the framework of EPCRA exists. Communities once had no way to know what was stored right next door to them, and now they do. The local emergency planning committee is where that structure becomes a working relationship at the local level. Tier 2 reporting and hazard analysis provide the information needed to understand chemical risks. Facilities report what they store, and our annual site visits verify it and turn it into something a responder can use at 3 in the morning or anytime. Elizabeth does the majority of them on her own, but like she said, when it comes to like Cape Canaveral, or we get to go to Disney World and all of the theme parks and get to see where they store their hazardous materials. And we get to see the backstage of all of that. So that's kind of an interesting part of our job. The data is only good as the effort behind it keeping current. So that's why we are required every year, and we are grant funded to do this. And keep in mind, these grants that we get for this particular job is coming from not your taxpayer dollars. It's coming from those placards that are displayed, and that you pay for those placards for the transportation, and it's the transportation companies that are paying for these. Also, we have grants that pay for exercises and training. So if you are a small community in our region and you would like to have an exercise, please do not hesitate to reach out to myself or Elizabeth. This is basically, no pun intended, but it's the fuel behind the plans. Tie it back to our office: emergency operations and continuity plans, mitigation and floodplain work, exercises, training and vulnerability assessments, and the LEPC and hazard analysis. Those are all the services available to every community in our 8-county region, and they are pretty much already funded. So if you're a facility and you file accurately and on time, and we welcome the site visit. If you're local government, come to the LEPC table and use us for planning and exercises. If you're a responder, tell us what information you need in the field or what training you want. And I'm going to close by thanking you for your time. And there's a survey that'll be coming up, and I really would like it if you were honest and let me know a little bit more of what your needs are from the Regional Planning Council Emergency Preparedness. So with that, there's our email addresses, and if time for some questions.
Thank you so much. That was very interesting. And as a reminder, today's recording will be posted on our YouTube channel by August 27th. You can take a screenshot with your phone to do the post-event survey. And please join us next month for our final Pillars of Innovation for 2026 on the art of strategic planning. We do have a few questions submitted here, and those in the who are joining us live can also submit questions via the Q&A. But I'll begin with the ones that we have already. How do I find out if there are any hazardous chemicals near me?
Elizabeth, you want to take that one? You're muted, Elizabeth.
Sorry about that. So you're asking about how you can find if there's any hazardous chemicals near you. What you can do is you have my email. You can send me an email asking that question. Provide me a location or approximate location of where you want this information surrounding. So like if you say you live in Lake Mary, just say I'm looking for whatever, you could say whatever chemicals are in or stored in the Lake Mary area, or I'm looking for a list of facilities that would impact the Lake Mary area.
Good. That's basically she needs an address, and once you give her an address, and if you want to know a surrounding area, like within a 50-mile radius, or if you actually happen to see a facility and you want to know if they are reporting the chemicals that you may know that are there, then by all means you can give that information to Elizabeth as well. That's a great question. Thanks, Ken. Next.
Next, we have how often is the local emergency operations plan updated, and what triggers an update?
So our emergency operations plan is updated annually, and that is triggered by a deliverable for that grant that we get, the LEPC grant. So we're required to update it annually. So that means we are constantly reviewing it, and then we have to submit that as a deliverable to the State Emergency Response Committee.
Okay. How are joint tabletop or full-scale exercises structured with private industry partners?
Oh, that's a great question. So we just had, I'll go back to the Operation Dark Horizon. When we decided to do this because we had to do a pipeline, I contacted the Florida Gas Transmission because it was their pipeline and said, we want to do this exercise. And they're like, we're in. And it's just as simple as a phone call, an email, or even an in-person. Getting the private partners involved is not really that hard to do. The private industry, they do want, especially we've learned that the private industry in regarding with hazardous materials, they do want to be out there. They do want people to know that they're there, and they do want to comply with EPCRA. So it's really not that hard to do. Some of the we did a exercise in Sumter County, and we used CSX because it was the railroad. So we included the villages on Sumter County and CSX Railroad, and that was a tabletop exercise that we did, and it brought CSX to the table, and a lot of trainings happened from that. So a lot of great things come from private partners getting together with our municipal partners and our county partners as well. So by all means, if you're a private partner and you want to exercise, we'll get that county and that city that you're in, and we'll make it happen. It'll be fun.
Great. We do have a Q&A, so please submit your questions in the Q&A. We do have one coming in here from Lex. How do you approach planning for potential hazardous materials on vacant, unused, or abandoned properties?
Vacant, unused, or abandoned properties. So what we would do first with that is, because we are not actually a response if we get notified about maybe some potential hazardous materials on a vacant property, we would notify the jurisdiction that that is in immediately. And so, like, for instance, if it's, I'll just throw out because I used to work in Volusia County. So if it's Volusia County, we would call Volusia County, their hazmat, Chief Lorimore at hazmat. We would call her and or call if it's something that's immediately like you see smoke or you see something wrong, that's when you call 911. But if it's something, if we get a tip, we'll go ahead and contact them. And they 9 times out of 10, I've found that when we get things reported to us, the first responders already kind of know about that. The citizens are really good about reporting things, and I think that's a lot to do with the things that have happened in the past, like the Bhopal and like the West Virginia Institute, West Virginia. I feel like because of that, that citizens are really good at seeing something and saying something. So I hope that answered your question.
And great. We have another one here from Linda. How are incidents communicated to private entities or local residents?
So, Linda, depending upon the incident, it's so incidents are communicated. Um, some incidents aren't communicated. Some incidents are taken care. Like we find out because we're not a response agency, but we are a central repository for all of the incidents that do happen. We keep all the information we get from the state warning point and from our from the facilities themselves. So the facilities also will report. As far as if it's something really huge, like the explosion that happened at Cape Canaveral, you're going to find about that on the news. If it's something that you have a question about, you're always welcome to email myself or Elizabeth. Elizabeth would be your first level right now when it comes to, she's the one who knows all the things going on with the hazard analysis. And but you can also include both of us in any email if you have a specific incident that you want to know about, or within our 8-county region, or if you have a specific building or a specific facility. I will say this though, there are some, and Elizabeth can back me up on this, there are some facilities that have proprietary information. They have to file that information with the state. If they have proprietary chemicals, the state knows about that. Sometimes we don't get information on that. That happens mostly with, we do have like several universities that have chemicals in their chemistry labs and things like that. But some of them, now remember, we talked about there's a threshold quantity. So depending on the type of chemical that it is, depends on how much they have to report after so many pounds. It's in pounds, right, Elizabeth?
Yes.
It's in pounds. So after even though if it's a liquid, it's still reportable in pounds. So if there's a certain amount of pounds, if they fall below that amount, they don't have to report it. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you for joining us today, and we hope you can join us next month.